It was yet another fun and sunny day in Camden Town. The Dalmatian family was over in the park having lots of fun. Dylan and Dolly both had their own things going on. While Dylan was playing frisbee with the rest of the pups, Dolly was happily giving a piggyback ride from her best friend, Roxy the Rottweiler. Dolly was cheering as she felt the wind. Roxy was just happy to see her best friend having the time of her life. After a while, she stopped and looked over at Dylan.
"What's troubling you, Roxy?"
Dolly asked curiously.
"I'm just wondering what Dylan is up to," Roxy responded. "Do you still have a crush on him?"
Dolly wondered.
"Well, I guess you can say I do," said Roxy. "I haven't had much luck with this gentleman, as you know."
Dolly rolled her eyes and said,
"Yeah, I know. Believe me. You're not thinking of getting back together with him, are you?" "Well, yes and no," said Roxy. "I do kind of want to have someone in my life, but the last time you tried to hook me up with Dylan, you got jealous, and that wasn't pretty." "That was kind of my fault, Roxy," said Dolly. "I admit that whole situation got way out of hand. I would like to at the very least be a close friend to him," said Roxy.
Dolly thought about this carefully. She thought about Dylan and what he's like, and she thought about Roxy. She did the math in her head and found out that the two of them actually could have some chemistry together.
"I think I can help you with that, Roxy," said Dolly. "Dylan is my brother and you're my best friend, so I actually think it might not be a bad idea for you two to spend a little bonding time together." "You really mean it?" asked Roxy. "Totally," said Dolly. "I'll help you out in any way that I can." "Are you sure you won't get jealous?" asked Roxy. "Nah," said Dolly. "I promise I won't let it get out of control like last time. I'll talk to Dylan tonight, and then I'll give you some pointers on how to get him to warm up to you. And I promise you two will be good as gold." "Oh, thank you so much, Dolly!" Roxy wagged. "You're the best friend any dog could ask for."
She then paused and asked the question.
"But are you sure this will work?" "I'm sure it will," answered Dolly. "Dylan's in kind of the same boat as you are as far as finding a lover goes, so I'm confident this will go well."
Roxy made a face of love as Dolly went back to play with the pups. That night, after the Dalmatian family returned home, Dolly and Dylan put all the pups to bed, but they returned in for the night for themselves. Before they turned in for the night themselves, Dolly approached Dylan.
"Hey, bro,"
said Dolly. Dolly sighed. "What?" And Dylan sighed. "What is it, Dolly?"
"I was wondering," Dolly said, "what are your current feelings towards Roxy?"
"I'm kind of on the fence about her," said Dylan. "Why?"
"Well, I was thinking it might be a good idea for the two of you to start bonding with each other," Dolly suggested.
Dylan flipped. "What? Are you out of your mind, Dolly? You know how much he scares me? She's a Rottweiler, you know. Also, last time you tried to hook her up with me, it ended with disastrous results."
"I know, Dylan," said Dolly, "but I learned my lesson after that time. Besides, I was just messing around with your stupidity back then. This time, I'm really being serious about you two hanging out together."
"And why, may I ask, are you doing so?" Dylan asked suspiciously.
"Well, she is looking for a lover, and she's still kind of interested in you," explained Dolly. "Plus, you're kind of in the same boat as her. I mean, you gotta admit, you're not having much luck with Portia."
Dylan thought about that and said, "I guess you are right about that to some degree, though I'm still a little hesitant to be around Roxy. She might get rough with me."
"Hey, Roxy's not that kind bad once you get to know her," said Dolly. "I know she may seem intimidating on the outside, but on the inside, she's actually really kind."
"Why should I believe you?" asked Dylan.
"Dylan, Roxy's my best friend," explained Dolly. "Believe me, I know her well enough. I'm sure you two will get along great with each other. Just give it a day, and I'm sure you'll find there are many great advantages to having her as a friend."
Dylan thought about this carefully until finally he said, "Very well, I'll give it a try and spend a day with her tomorrow. But only this once. If it doesn't work out, you owe me big time."
"Challenge accepted, bro," said Dolly.
The next day, Dolly went out to get Roxy. As she took her back to 101 Dalmatian Street, she took Roxy some pointers on how to be nice with Dylan. Roxy understood every word. She was still a little unsure, but she trusted her friend. Dolly said Dylan should accept her. After all, he is her best friend's brother. Dolly and Roxy walked up to the front door and rang the doorbell. Dylan opened the door. He was a little surprised to see Roxy.
"Here we are, just as we promised, bro," said Dolly with a smirk.
Roxy happily panted as she looked down at Dylan. Hi, Roxy, Dylan said nervously. Won't you come in?
It's okay, Dylan, said Dolly. I promise you. Roxy is nice. You guys will have lots of fun together. Roxy wrapped her arm around Dylan and said, We're gonna have lots of fun together, Dylan. Just stick with me and you won't regret it.
If you said so, said Dylan unsure. Later that day, out in the backyard, Dylan was trying to move a trash can, though it was too heavy for him to push.
What you doing, Dylan?
Roxy asked. I'm trying to move this trash can over to my treehouse, Dylan answered, but it's too heavy.
Here, Dylan, said Roxy. Let me help.
Roxy gave the trash can a push. She moved it with ease right over to the spot where Dylan wanted it. Impressed, Dylan said, My, Roxy, you're pretty strong.
Oh, it's natural,
Roxy said, flexing her muscles. A little later in the house, Dylan was doing some cleaning. He was trying to reach the kitchen counter. He tried to jump up to reach it, but couldn't. Suddenly, he caught himself moving up towards it. He was now at the perfect spot where he could reach it with ease. He wondered how he got up so high, until he looked down and saw that Roxy was underneath him. She had lifted him up on her head.
Thought maybe you could use a lift, she said.
Hey, this is pretty cool, said Dylan. This way I'm able to reach the surfaces I wasn't able to clean before. When all that said and done, he proceeded with his cleaning. Later still, Dylan and Roxy were out for a walk. Along the way, Dylan encountered two larger dogs who growled ferociously at him by trespassing on their territory. Dylan got scared and didn't know what to do, until Roxy stepped in and told them off, scaring them away. Dylan sighed with relief and said, Thanks for saving my tail back there, Roxy.
My pleasure, said Roxy.
After a while, Dylan got tired of walking so much. Man, my dogs are killing me, he said, and home is still a long way away. Roxy felt bad for Dylan, so she bent down.
Come on, Dylan, she said. Hop aboard. I'll carry you the rest of the way.
Oh, thank you, Roxy, said Dylan as he climbed under her back. Roxy helpfully piggybacked Dylan the rest of the way back home. When they got back, Dolly was waiting outside for them. She noticed Dylan was riding on Roxy's back and seemed perfectly okay with it. This gave her a hint that the two of them managed to become friends after all.
Well, looks like you two have certainly warmed up to each other quite nicely, said Dolly.
We sure have, said Roxy as she lowered Dylan off her back. You were right, Dolly, said Dylan. Roxy really is a great friend. Since we started bonding with her, I learned there are many great advantages of having her as a friend. She's strong, she's helpful, she's generous, and she makes a great bodyguard.
What did I tell you, bro?
Dolly said with a wink. Any friend of Dolly is a friend of mine, said Dylan.
You really mean it, Dylan?
Asked Roxy. Yep, said Dylan. As a matter of fact, now that we bonded for a bit, I have an idea for something I could use you for.
Oh?
Roxy puzzled. Dolly blinked out of confusion as well. Come with me, Roxy, said Dylan. I'll show you what we're going to do. Roxy followed Dylan to where he wanted to go.
This I gotta see,
said Dolly as she followed them closely. Dylan told Roxy to what appeared to be some kind of parts store. Dolly hid in a nearby bush to witness this.
What are we here for, Dylan?
Roxy asked. Dylan explained, I'm working on a new invention that will allow me to look into a solar eclipse without damaging my eyes.
Sounds very fascinating, said Roxy.
I need some supplies for this invention, and the only way to get them is in that store, Dylan explained.
But how are we going to get in?
asked Roxy. The sign says no dogs allowed. I am aware of that, said Dylan. That's where you come in, because with your help, I can get around that rule. Dylan pulled out a brown trench coat and a gray fedora. With this disguise, you and I could pass off as a human.
That sounds so brilliant, Dylan,
Roxy cheered.
Okay, I'm in.
Dylan slipped on the coat and hat, and then he climbed onto Roxy's shoulders.
You sure this will work, Dylan?
Roxy asked. Well, it's worth a shot, answered Dylan. Roxy stood up on her hind legs. Dylan buttoned up the coat and then put on a pair of Groucho Marx glasses. All right, we're all set. Let's go, Roxy, said Dylan. Roxy slowly walked inside the building. Dolly laughed to herself at this act. Inside the shop, Dylan guided Roxy to where he wanted to go, grabbing all the parts he needed. Although one thing Dylan didn't know about Roxy is that she was pretty clumsy. The duo did move pretty awkwardly, but managed to remain their balance without getting caught.
Sorry, Dylan,
Roxy whispered.
I guess I am a tad clumsy.
Well, try to slow down, and we won't have so many problems, said Dylan. Roger that, said Roxy as she continued to walk. Dylan continued to guide Roxy through the shop until he got all the supplies he needed. Roxy peeked out of the coat a couple of times to see where she was going, but quickly hid again whenever any humans approached. After a while, they finally made it to the checkout counter. Dylan put all his supplies on the counter, and the cashier rang it all up. "Your total comes out to 61 pounds and 97 shillings, said the cashier. As Dylan placed the money on the counter, Roxy sniffed as she picked up the scent of the snacks that were at the check stand. The smells were so delicious that she started to pant. Dylan heard this and, fearing it would blow their cover, did his best to shut Roxy up. The cashier blinked. "What was that?" he asked. Dylan laughed nervously. "That was just my ordinaries. I'm feeling a little gassy," he said. Although to the cashier, this only came out as barks. The cashier assumed this man had a speech impediment of some kind and just carried on. Dylan took the supplies and signaled Roxy to leave. Roxy once again walked clumsily. The duo were awkwardly tried to exit the building. They barely made it out safely without getting caught. Once they were out, Dylan took off the disguise. "We do make a great team," said Roxy. "Good girl, Roxy," Dylan said, patting Roxy's head. Roxy panted a response, and then Dylan got off her. Dolly clapped her paws. Dylan was surprised to see that Dolly was there watching them all along. "Well done, you two," she said. "I think this confirms that you two are friends for sure." "Yeah, but just friends," said Dylan. "I don't want you to think about feeling a relationship just yet." "Understandable." All of a sudden, a very loud and vicious roar was heard from Roxy. This made Dylan jump. "Yikes!" he screamed. "I knew something was up. Roxy just growled at me. She wants to eat me alive." Dolly laughed. "Relax, bro. Roxy isn't a cannibal." Just then, the growl was heard again. This made Dylan jump again. "Then how do you explain that?" he asked. "I should have known you were tricking me again, Dolly." Little did Dylan know, the growling was actually coming from Roxy's stomach. "Oh, don't worry, Dylan," said Roxy. "That was just my belly rumbling. I guess I am feeling a bit famished. Let's go back to our place and have some kibble," said Dolly. "That sounds rather splendid," said Roxy. "I can even carry you both over there if you'd like." "That'd be great," said Dylan. Dylan and Dolly got on Roxy's back and rode her back to the house. "Say, Dylan," Roxy asked if she was heading back to the house, "I was wondering after lunch if you'd like me to help you build your invention." Dylan thought about this and said, "Come to think of it, there are some steps that involve heavy lifting, so sure." "Great! I'd love to help," Roxy said. "I might even let you try it out when I finish it," Dylan added. "Oh, that'd be wonderful." Dolly just smiled as the two of them, knowing that this plan of hers turned out to be a job well done, and she looked forward to seeing what other fun stuff they two might do in the future. The end.